I mean, how long has it been since we've talked like this?
Forever.
We talk,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. There are not nearly as many lights.
no,
usually.
not usually.
I think it's worth asking you, why did you sign up for this independent movie? Because setting the time period, the Raimi, the first few Spidey films had come out, the first few X-Men films had come out. There'd been Tim Story's Fantastic Four, 1 at least, maybe 2 was in production, and they had all been varying degrees of successful. We then became Marvel Studios, got our own financing, and Iron Man was the first independent movie. And something that now, 15 years on, everybody knows about you is that you are incredibly forward-thinking. I remember having a conversation with you early on. You were talking about, basically, and not in these words, the power of IP and the power of IP to bring in the eyeballs, which I always thought, oh, is that why you signed up for this independent studio?
I think it's IP linked with technology.
Yes.
When we talk about Iron Man, I think that there was an opportunity for something that I grew up with, that character and those books and the Marvel characters. And Iron Man was not by any means my favorite at the time when I was younger. But I knew him and I knew his origin story, and I had an understanding of the Avengers, though I leaned more towards the Hulk, or characters like that, or Spider-Man from Queens like me. And then there was also what was happening with CGI, with like the Transformers and such. So hard surface CGI was looking really good. And so it's like, okay, this might be the moment where this all clicks together. And I had come in
practical
because I had, practical, because that's what I was doing on Zathura.
Totally.
So remember, the reason I got there was you saw in it, oh, John understands how to do visual effects. And then I think we were able to break out because it was a combination of casting, Robert, Gwyneth, the right people, Jeff, the whole gang. There was like a really good talent pool. When it came to the dialogue and how we shot it, there was a lot of latitude.
I don't want to see this on your MySpace page. Please, no gang signs. No, throw it up, I'm kidding. Yeah, peace. I love peace. I'll be out of a job with peace.
Well, and that tone that you and Robert discovered on that movie, I would say became the template in a way for much of what the MCU became.
It was very consistent with Stan Lee's tone,
Right.
but that tone of a little bit of a fun, a little bit of a subversiveness, but then also a heart and an earnestness to it too.
Yep.
That I think was really, really cool.
When the audience opens themselves up to laughter, you can then also sneak them in with the emotion.
Right.
And I think that is why
It's a good
people
combo.
talk about a Marvel formula. Humor is a big part of it, because that's what we want to go see in theaters, but because then we get the instant feedback.
But you had come more from the action realm, which I didn't know.
Yep.
And so we were trying to recut these scenes to get a cheer at the end of the set pieces. And I could never get like a cheer. And you would always be like, we can really get a cheer. I was like, I don't know, but I could get a laugh at the end of it. And so you could sometimes trade out and get a laugh at the end of an action sequence. Whether it's the fire extinguisher spraying him or him falling through the thing or the crashing into the sand or.
That movie in particular, and you and Robert on that movie, it's the balance, right? Between, poking fun at it or taking the piss out of a moment, but also, and this is what you both are so good at, taking it seriously. And I remember we added the ADR line when Tony comes out of the cave and takes all the bullet hits. And then we added this very earnest, my turn. And then he lights the flames. And there was a high degree of cheesiness there, but Robert killed it. And I think that's one of those cheer moments.
My turn.
It wasn't really until we cast Robert that I fully understood what the take was. And once it was Robert, then it was like, I know what every decision became a lot easier.
Should we talk about that? Because I think that's probably one of the greatest decisions in the history of Hollywood. And everybody has good days and bad days. And I remember on later movies, we'll talk about on 15th anniversary of those, there were dark days. And I would say to Robert, we wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for you. Meaning, we wouldn't have a studio if it wasn't for him.
That's true.
Or you. Tell me your memories of where that idea came from, because there were some other people. There were, and I've talked about it.
I remember that Robert had come in for a general on it, and I remember you had all met with him already for like Dr. Doom or something on another project. I think I think he had come through on a maybe Fantastic Four.
Right.
So everybody sort of knew who he was. And I remember sitting down with the guy and I was like, geez, he just got it in it. He's got that spark in him and his eye, and he's ready. And that's when we were in your office and we were pointing to his headshot and saying, we got to try to figure this out.
Yeah.
That was enough to get us a screen test.
I assure you the day weapons are no longer needed to keep the peace cell happily transist to manufacturing bricks and beams for baby hospitals, making hemp pants and the like. But until that time, can I get you a drink?
But then once it was him, that's when my life got a lot easier because understood the voice of the character, and then one by one, people were just signing on board.
Yep.
Because now it became something interesting to
Gwyneth,
people.
Jeff.
Gwyneth,
Yep.
Jeff, it all galvanized at that point. And then people were just popping in because it was cool. Paul Bettany,
At your service, sir.
who I had worked with on Wimbledon, just doing a voice, and
Yep.
Clark Gregg,
Yep.
who's my neighbor. So, but it felt like a cool project to go to somebody and say, hey, we're doing this with this. Oh yeah, I'll come. I'll do a voice. I'll do it.
But even the way you describe it is a cool. I remember, not that you were high strung or stressed before that, but I remember I was and still am. I remember a shift when I remember you even saying once Downey was signed and it was done and he was in, you were like, oh, good. Now I can just make the movie. Now I can just have fun.
I
and
know
make the
what
movie.
it is.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it when you're directing, it's you have to have a point of view that has to last you years. And if you don't have that, I don't know how you do it. So that's part of it, that's the alchemy of it, of getting the right people together and getting the right vision for it. It's not a director down thing. It's a group thing that emerges.
Yes.
And you're making a lot of decisions, but the thing kind of takes on its own energy. And then him coming on, it clicked it. And then we started working together more at that point too, and figuring it out because it became a concrete thing we were going to do. So he was that puzzle piece that made it all work. And I would argue that going to Comic-Con when that footage first showed was the other shoe falling, because we knew what Robert was like in this role and that he was just doing it, and we were doing rewrites with him constantly. Think of another actor. We would not have been up at night after rap, rewriting the next day's
Remember the vetting
rewriting
tent?
the next day's scenes and improvising on the set.
Yep.
And so it was, he had a very, I think, a standard that he wanted to hit with, not wanting this to feel basic. He wanted to be special.
We all knew that it was a big shot for us. It was certainly a big shot for me, my first full producer credit and really having all the responsibility, whether it succeeded or failed. But I also knew I had nothing to lose. So let's do, at least at the end of the day, let's end up with something we're proud of, regardless of how it does. Downey, from that first screen test, with Jimmy Rich and the suit, and then Team Downey coming in. I mean, I thought he has a team? Wow. He knew this was his shot and it was gonna work.
Yeah.
In 3, 2, 1.
I'm curious about your memories of opening weekend. My memory of it is that, and this is strange, and I'm not sure I've thought about it like this before, is that I don't remember a lot of pressure, because in my head we'd already won even before that opening weekend, because we talk about the Comic-Con event being a big game changer.
Right. When we showed that trailer, and we scrambled, because we were still, I don't know if we were still shooting, but we're certainly still in post-production in the editing room. It was a year out from release.
Yes.
So, and then we had that one shot with him flying at the end, because that's all we could scramble and get. We had so much practical stuff, for budget, but it also made us in a position to, we could cut a trailer together, because we had him in the Mark I moving around. And then it ended with him flying and like breaking the sound barrier. And it was like,
great shot.
Oh wow, this is gonna work.
The Onion, I think, did a headline saying, fan favorite trailer being turned into a feature. And I remember thinking,
that's right.
Yes, being turned into a motion picture.
That's so funny.
But by the time we got towards opening weekend, it felt like, how big is big to me?
Right, and they were projecting a certain number that would have been great.
Yes.
And then it just...
Because you're 100% right, we were equating ourselves with the Fox movies of the early aughts.
But they also had tracking would give you, I think still does, gives you a number. And
A range.
Are we going to hit that
That's right.
number-ish? And then it outperformed that.
Yes.
And we were all together because it was a different, I don't know, somehow you'd have to get the numbers from, maybe it's still the same way. You get the numbers from the studio.
Yes.
So there's like a number you're calling or somebody's filling you in.
That's right.
And so we were all together having dinner,
Yep.
and then we were going to go to the theaters
Mm-hmm.
and sneak into the back of the theaters. So we were together before the night shows in West Coast, and we were getting the numbers from the East Coast.
Exactly.
And I remember you gifted me the Star Wars book when we were up at Skywalker Ranch doing post-production, mixing it, which was a compendium of interviews that were done before the film came out. And the uncertainty that was in the press notes from the people who were being interviewed before they knew whether people would click with Star Wars or not.
Yep.
Was really inspiring to me because there we were, not knowing that it could go either way. But I remember we were getting the numbers, and we were there at Giorgio's,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody had booked a back room, and we were
Yes.
there with all the people who made it and
Yep.
and some of the cast.
Yep.
And Robert was just, every time that the call was made and the number kept going up, he was like, "It's going to hit 100." He was like, "It's going to hit 100." I'm like, "Oh God, why are you jinxing it?" I'm just happy if it hits whatever it was supposed to hit. What it was supposed to hit, I forget. But it was more than what we had projected what it was going to end up being.
That was my memory, is that even the low end of projections
Yeah.
for opening weekend was higher than we would have, was amazing. Would have been amazing 2 years before when we'd started it.
The only thing I remember for sure is that no matter how good it was doing, I never felt like high-fiving like we won
Mm-hmm.
a softball, game.
Yes.
It felt like relief.
Yeah.
It felt like, okay, we didn't mess up. Like, people like it. And then by the time and then the part that I liked, wasn't the numbers. It was when we went to the theaters and we would see it play,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the type of movie, it's a fun type to go to because people cheer
Yep.
and then people also laugh. If you're doing a drama, very hard to really feel the room,
Yes.
because there's an energy, they get quiet, you could kind of tell if they're engaged. But when you have one of those types of movies, when people are cheering and people are laughing, for me, coming from being a performer, when you get that, it's almost like it's the same feeling you get when you're performing in front of
I think you instilled that
audience.
in us. I think you instilled that in us. And even in those, I don't remember how many friends and families we did, 2 or 3 or 4, but when they were laughing, you knew they were in.
Yeah.
And going back to opening night, when we were at the
Yeah.
Cinerama Dome, introducing it, you and I and Downey and some of the team, to a packed audience, and
Unannounced.
totally unannounced.
Yeah,
We just went in the back,
we just hit all the different theaters.
and the Cinerama Dome was one of them. And many years later, I learned that Ryan Coogler, who would go on to direct
Really?
Black Panther, was in the audience that night. And he told me a story. This was months and months, if not a year, into working with him.
Yeah.
He said, "By the way, I want to tell you something. I was at the Cinerama Dome." Oh, he was in college, and he saw it. And he said that he saw the 3 of us walk past him. He'd been getting popcorn and was running in late as we were going out. And he said, "And you guys look confident. I knew the movie was going to be good. You look confident." I have no
Oh,
memory
wow.
of feeling confident at all that
Me
night.
neither.
But many years later, thinking that movie.
I think he was projecting
Yes, exactly.
because I was in a blur. I think by the time we were announcing it,
Yes.
we
were
probably
feeling good.
were
Yeah,
feeling
we were feeling good
yeah.
about it. We've maybe seen some
Do you
of those
still do
numbers.
that? Do you still go around?
We do. Almost every movie. We do. Do you go around people's houses
Yeah,
when
when
the
I'm
thing
streaming?
drops on Disney Plus? Yeah.
Yes.
Knock, knock, knock.
That's what's been fun about me be able to pop back in to be Happy Hogan, because I
Oh,
get
the
to
best.
like come in and be around it, and it's like I never left. It's really
You never
fun.
did. And again, in terms of your forward thinkingness, I've told this story before, but we were in that conference room in those offices above the Mercedes dealership in
right.
Beverly Hills, and we were just figuring out how to do it. And I remember saying something to you like, "John, we're going to be together every day for the next 2 years, so let's figure out." And you said, "No, if this works, we're going to be together for the next 10 years." And you were wrong, because it's now been 15 years.
15. I knew with like Guardians, that's when I was like, oh, this isn't just building off the momentum of what we did. There's new stuff unfolding.
Yeah,
and
Guardians
then,
was a
then
big
Black
one for
Panther
that.
was another huge one like that. And by the way, Avengers at all. that step up from what we were doing was grounded in headlines, reality, to now we're gonna figure out a way to bring in these other heroes from the books that don't fit into the tech genre. Or I guess it technically does, but it's from other technologies from other worlds. So when you got into Thor, it's still tech, but it's otherworldly tech.
Well, and it was Coulson who allowed a little connectivity between those things.
And of course Sam.
Yeah.
You know, so you had those those glue characters who were good glue characters, and lucky that we.
And you described Nick Fury early on, because of course in Iron Man 1 he was just the tag.
Yeah, that was like an Easter egg, basically.
Totally.
Hey, let's get the guy who, that the
artists were drawing him. Yes, we're drawing Sam Jackson.
That's a great little tip of the cap.
Yes. Well, you then described him, as we were going forward, as Gandalf. That he would appear when needed with answers, and I always thought that was a very smart idea for Fury.
We had good instincts to have, like in Iron Man 2, the map behind him show Wakanda, to show, and fans were starting to look and see, and then you ended up paying all that stuff off.
Having the liberty to dream about what would be possible in success, but not to lose sight that you will not have success if whatever you're working on right now doesn't work. And of course, with Marvel, we have the comics, and we have decades and decades of the comics. And the movies now, 15 years is a very long time for a movie franchise. For the history of Marvel Comics, it's not entirely that long. Yeah, which is what's amazing.
And there's a lot of leeway too, because there's so many different versions of there's different writers who came in and different artists, and each has an era. So there's a lot to draw from, but it also puts a lot of responsibility on the team, whether it's the writers, directors, producers, who are trying to figure out how to make all of this align in a way that's palatable to a movie audience. And then it's also like you have two movie audiences, because you got the casual movie audience that just wants to come and have a good time. And you still have to make it fun for them, or somebody new, next generation. Then you have the people who know it better than you do. And how do you make it work for both? And that's a very tricky.
I would say that's one of the reasons we put the Nick Fury tag at the end. So it would not be intrusive or disruptive for somebody like, why is Sam Jackson here? Why is Sam Jackson in his living room? But if you've waited for those credits, you're probably.
And as Edgar Wright suggested, all the way at the end of the credits.
The very end.
Remember when we showed it to him at Skywalker? It was just after the first few credits. He's like, nah, you got to push
the whole
it
end.
all the way.
Ferris Bueller style. Yes.
Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
It's the group of people, right? A lot of people always talk about film being collaborative medium, which it is. But you need collaborators that you trust, and you need collaborators that you trust have one goal in mind. And sometimes it takes time to read people and figure it out, but you were able to mold a group and a system there that we've tried to carry through, where we're just a bunch of nerds that want to make something cool.
It very much felt that way, and it didn't feel like I was the one who was bringing that, though I'll take the compliment, but I felt that there was an enthusiasm around getting to do it.
Yeah, that's the key to it all.
Because that's when you started doing Marvel movies, it was long before Iron Man, and it was starting off working your way up and through. Now the movie, how many years later was invited into the film?
It was just last year.
The National Film Registry.
The National Archives inducted Iron Man for its cultural significance.
Now you went to film school, so could you give me greater context?
I have no context except whenever I look up an old movie, or whenever I am going down a rabbit hole of classic films, on the Wikipedia page, there's always a mention, what year was it inducted or not? So it always felt to me like it meant something, that if there's if the meteor comes and hits the planet Earth somewhere, there's a vault, a solid vault of the most important films that will spin off into space and be found someday.
I like that it gives it.
I don't know if that's true, by the way. That's what
I'll go with that. Yeah. But it's cool that it seems like it's not the genre or the type of movie that would end up in the company of other films that I hear are there.
I don't know all of the criteria, but what it boils down to, I think, is culturally significant. And
for that, I think it is. I think it is. Yeah.
And there are a lot of markers for that, right? There's box office, there's awards, I've always thought, going back to that Making of Star Wars book that I shared, right?
was
To
it.
me, the most important thing was the test of time.
Right.
To win the Test of Time award. And I think getting in there was a sign to
I
me.
think that is that the older I get, the more I realize that that's to be on a list is cool because I like that it seems to be like everybody understands what that is. But the one I really like is when I see how it's influenced other people.
Yeah.
And it has been remarkable how much interest has been maintained because it's so hard to be relevant for that long, for a genre, let alone a studio. What I find is interesting now is there's people who grew up with it, who this is their context. These are archetypes that are the basis for conversation. Politicians, remember Obama was like, "We're building an Iron Man suit." I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. I was like, "What?" But like, it's part of the fabric. It's become something more.
Yes. That's what means the most, other than being able to sit here with you 15 years later.
Yeah.
Here's to another 15.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.